Well, to know more about this topic, we've got a very special guest,
That's right.
and he is His Excellency Mr. Vincent Piket, the European Union Ambassador to Indonesia.
That's right.
And he's with our colleague Yasha right over there.
All right. Thank you, Dirza. Thank you, Wibi, for the introduction. Yes, that's right. With me today is His Excellency Mr. Vincent Piket, the European Union Ambassador to Indonesia, and he is here right now. Thank you very much, sir, for coming to our studio for this. And we're gonna, of course, talk about the crisis in Ukraine at the moment, and also the energy issues that is facing Europe as well, because there's certain dependency of Russian oils and gas in this regard. So, all right. So, first of all, what is the EU's positions towards the crisis in Ukraine, sir?
Our position is very strongly that this is an unprovoked attack, an invasion of a sovereign country by Russia. We are asking Russia to cease fire and to withdraw its troops unconditionally from Ukrainian soil. And we're also asking Russia to respect humanitarian values and to respect also the safety of the corridors whereby war refugees can flee the country. And when I say that this is the EU position, then I should add that this is not just us saying this. 140 members of the United Nations General Assembly say exactly the same. So it is a very strong message from the international community, east and west, north and south, to Russia to end this war.
All right. It has been more than 30 days since the Russian forces they deployed their forces into Ukraine, and what we are seeing right now, there's different impacts of this crisis, and right now is rising prices in Europe, especially because there's sanctions against Russia at the moment, and we also see there's a rise in gas energy prices. Most of Europe depends on supplies from Russia. Could you share with us the EU's policy regarding matter? And also, we just delivered the news regarding Poland releasing a statement that by the end of 2022, it's cutting off its dependency from Russian oil.
Well, let me first of all be very clear that the very insecurity and the instability in global commodities and energy markets is not caused by sanctions. It's caused by the Russian attack against Ukraine, which has provoked this global crisis, not only in security terms, but also in terms of the economic dimension. It has driven up the oil and gas prices globally, it has an impact for everybody in Europe, in Asia, including Indonesia, and it has caused a major disruption in commodities trades such as the wheat and the sunflower and the related oils from Ukraine. Let's not forget, I mean, there's a sheer blockade by Russian military vessels of the major Ukrainian ports, so they're just unable to export. Now, what does the EU do about this? What is our approach? Energy is, of course, the most critical commodity on which we are too dependent on Russia presently, 30 to 40%, depending on the member state, and that's too high. And so our determination is very much that we wish to bring that down massively at a very short term. This is what our leaders decided in their summit of last Friday. How is then, first of all, of course, by diversifying our supply, and you will have read several reports about EU negotiating with suppliers elsewhere in the world than Russia, the provision of LPG and oil. So that is something that we will continue to do. Secondly, we will stock up on energy. with looking ahead to the European winter, which is November, December this year, make sure that for whatever were to happen on the crisis in Ukraine, we will have sufficient energy resources to keep our economies running. And the last element I should mention that you will know that the EU had already a very proactive renewable energy policy, a policy for promoting energy efficiency. Now, that policy existed before the crisis, but the crisis has made that we wish to accelerate that policy massively and reduce by up to 20% of our consumption of fossil fuels in the very short term.
I really would like to, I'm curious, I would like to go back to the first question regarding the position of EU, but also we talk about the position of Ukraine, because Ukraine is not a member of the European Union, but there's so many things happening, there's a lot of summits, even President Joe Biden came to Europe to discuss this on, for European Council, for G7, and also NATO. Will this also just different responses from EU regarding this crisis, will that also be applied when other countries in such close proximity with Europe experience such a thing?
Ukraine borders on 5 EU member states.
Okay.
And in the past week, the shelling of Ukrainian civilian and other objects was visible and was audible from the European side of the border, so to say. So just to show how close this is to us. Security of Ukraine is a fundamental interest of ours. Necessarily, it's a major neighbor. And that's why we take this very strong interest in the first place. The second interest is that we have a UN Charter. And that says very clearly in its Article 2 that no country shall use force or the threat of force against other members of the United Nations unless there is a real threat. Now, there was no real threat in this case. It was a perceived threat and a threat that was part of a propaganda campaign by Russia. So also for that reason, for the respect of the international security order, the EU takes this matter so seriously. We see this in the larger context, the safety of Europe. We still have the memory of the Second World War, which ravaged Europe from left to right and from north to south. And we have, over the past 70 years, built this zone of peace and of stability and of prosperity for our citizens. And we don't want that to be jeopardized by this military aggression by Russia. We have to look at the longer term, at ending the crisis now by the ceasefire, the withdrawal of troops, but also look to the longer term of arriving at, through the negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, at a durable solution to the dispute and the problems they have in front of us. And the EU will be ready to support that negotiated solution.
All right. What you just mentioned, there's a lot of historical background, the reasoning there, that Europe still remembers what happened in the Second World War, and also this is a security issue. And because we are so, Indonesia, Southeast Asia is so far away from Europe, perhaps you could also help clarify and define the line between the role of the European Union and NATO.
Well, we are distinct entities, and we have cooperation and strong links between the EU and NATO, but we are distinct. The European Union is not a military entity. It has a defense profile, but that is part of the larger community of countries that we have shaped. And now, don't forget, indeed, that we have 5 member states bordering on Ukraine, and we have another 5 bordering on Russia. So we are extremely closely connected with these regions. We have always, historically, had close relations also with Russia, cultural and people to people, but also economically and political. And all of that is now jeopardized by the Russian attack. So sometimes you read notions in the Russian campaigns that Europe is Russophobic, that we dislike Russia, Russians. No, that's not the case. We want warm relations and deep relations with Russia, but we are totally opposed to what the Kremlin is currently doing in Ukraine, and that's our goal right now, to bring that to an end.
Would there be can the European Union be the side that can help create the peace? It seems like right now they're trying to do the negotiations outside Europe, which is in Turkey. Would that role be more appropriate for Europe? Because, like you said, there's 5 countries bordering Russia directly, and also other countries bordering Ukraine.
Well, there is a negotiation taking shape this week, and we hope that Russia will engage in the negotiations with sincerity and seriously in order to stop the immediate crisis. What happens next is an open question for now. First, we need to address the short term, but from our point of view, it would be utterly normal for the multilateral system, the UN, and to take a role in this and to form a guarantee for the next process, for the lasting solution, for the security guarantees that Ukraine wishes to have. And here the European Union will be a great supporter. We have already said, our leaders, last Friday, that we are, as soon as the fighting stops and the destruction stops of Ukrainian cities and industry and ports and infrastructure, that we are ready to help the rebuilding of Ukraine from the EU. We have set up a fund for that, and it will be a colossal task. The damage is tremendous. I read an estimate of $600 billion US. So that's a massive task we have added up, but certainly the EU will wish to be there. And lastly, at the political level, our leaders have said we want to offer Ukraine the perspective of joining the European Union as a member state, to be also a full part of the integrated Europe that we have built, a peaceful Europe that we have constructed. And so that is also for the European Union a tremendously important political gesture that we have put on the table.
How optimistic are you with the peace talks currently happening? Seeing that is the crisis right now, is it going to be is it going to escalate even further, or is it's because we are in it's been over a month since the first day of the attack. How do you see it?
Well, with these negotiations, we have to have a little bit patience and not run away with the facts. And the bottom line is that the two sides, but especially Russia, walks the talk and does what it says it will. And for now, we don't have, our reports suggest that that is not yet the case on the ground, that fighting does go on. So we have to give it a little bit more time. There were some positive indications, but it is too early to say.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about the EU society. We see that a lot of refugees had to flee Ukraine since the start of the crisis, and a lot of countries are accepting them. What's going to happen in those countries? Is there a specific policy in absorbing the refugees into the societies of members of the European Union, or is there plans to have them repatriate to Ukraine when the crisis is over?
Well, the EU leaders have said right from the start that to Ukraine and Ukrainian citizens, our borders are open for you. If you have to flee the fighting, you're welcome to seek shelter within the European Union. And right now, according to the figures we have got, 3.5 million Ukrainian refugees have sought shelter inside the EU. So that is a massive, massive number. The Ukrainian refugees can stay initially for a year, can be extended. We hope it won't be necessary. They can have medical aid, the kids can go to school, people can find jobs, etc. So that is a very, very strong offer at the level of our governments. The biggest burden is, of course, on the countries, the EU countries that neighbor on Ukraine, Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, Romania and Bulgaria. But the EU leaders have also decided that we will share the burden with the neighboring countries on Ukraine. In other words, all 27 member states of the EU will take part in the sheltering of the Ukrainian refugees. Lastly, the citizen response. I was in Brussels and in Berlin in the past 10 days, and I can tell you this, that this is a matter that you can feel in the streets of Europe, of the two capitals where it was. People live for this, and if you read the reports of how individuals have decided to offer their own homes for Ukrainian refugees, to come and live with them for as long as it takes. And that, I think, is a wonderful gesture. They've offered to transport the refugees from the border to places where they can stay for a while. So also at the level of the citizen response, we have seen a massive statement of solidarity and of sympathy towards Ukraine.
Okay. Let's talk about, the neighboring countries. We heard that Ukraine's neighboring countries are eyeing the consequences of the war. Russia is a powerhouse economically, and both Russia and Ukraine have a major part in the European and global supply chain. What is the EU's mitigation plan for that?
Well, for energy, I've already suggested the main goal is to cut our dependence on Russian energy supplies. Let me remind you that in the past, before this crisis, on several occasions in the recent history, we were already suffering energy sabotage and energy blackmail by Russia against the EU or EU member states. So, and now we have made up our mind that this has to end, and we will do everything that we can to realize that goal. It will cost us money, that's clear, but we will support this goal with funding from the EU budget in two ways. First of all, for the joint purchase of energy on the world market, and secondly, we will provide through the EU budget and through member state budgets financial support to low-income households that all of a sudden see their energy bill, their electricity bill go up by 30–40% and could be in trouble. And we will secondly also support the companies, especially the smaller companies that could risk going under in these with this new situation and with the high energy prices. Those companies will also be able to get a support. So a very concrete buffer is being provided for European economy and for European citizens.
Is that going to cost more, though? Getting it from other sources in terms of energy and other supplies?
Well, in the short term it will. We know we have to pay this price, but we also know that if we don't pay the price now, the price will be bigger later on. So that is for the short term. For the medium to long term, our goal is to anyway reduce the use of fossil fuels and to massively increase the renewables in our energy mix, to cut on energy in general, so more energy efficiency, and we have our building plans to make that by the year 2030 we will no longer be needing oil or gas from Russia any longer.
Okay, so if peace is achieved with whatever term there will be, will this policy change, or is it going to be like that regardless of the outcome with the peace terms when that happens?
Well, the policy is going to be as I've described, so it won't change. Bear in mind that we have our very ambitious climate and energy goals anyhow, and so all of these aspects were already part of our thinking, and what we're seeing now is a very strong acceleration of what we had been planning to do over a longer period. So that will be happening in our policy and continue to be part of our policy.
All right, last question, Your Excellency. How do you see the current conditions affecting Europe-Asian relations?
Well, I think it shows very much that we need partnerships all over the world with countries that respect and support the multilateral system, the UN, and that believe in long-term sustainable cooperative relations based on the international rule of law. And here in Asia, of course, we can easily see the partnerships for this. Let me mention ASEAN as one example. ASEAN very much a sister or brother organization of the European Union with similar goals and tools, less advanced than we are, but that doesn't matter. The spirit and the political objective is the same. So ASEAN will be an important partner for pursuing these goals of stability and peace. And within ASEAN, we are here in Jakarta, so let me certainly mention Indonesia, a major partner for the EU, very like-minded with us if you look at the multilateral system and the pursuit of peace through the UN. So certainly with Indonesia as a political power, but also as an economic and growing economic power in the world, certainly Indonesia will be our front-rank partner for collaboration, especially now.
All right, Your Excellency, thank you very much for your time, for the explanation and updates on EU progress regarding the crisis in Ukraine. Thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome.
All right, so that was our special interview with the EU ambassador to Indonesia, His Excellency, Mr. Vincent Piket. So now we go back to Dirza and Wibi in the studio.